All right. See everyone trickling in. I hope everyone has their cups of coffee or water or whatever you like to drink. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. All right. Well, I'll go ahead and dive into the welcome so that we can use up as much time as we need for this amazing presentation. So welcome everyone. My name is Gary Clark, President CEO, Economic Alliance, Snohomish County, coming to you with another coffee chat. And I am pleased and honored to have our special guest here. Before we dive into that though, you know that I love to give you guys the housekeeping rules. So make sure that you add your organization to your name so that we know where you're speaking from as you chime in the chat, and really get engaged, because I think you're going to have some interesting opportunities for conversation on this chat. And we just really appreciate you being here and taking the time to join us. So today we have with us Anna-Marie Cauce, and I probably got that a little off, but I'm going to keep trying. I'm hopefully see you again. But this is the UW's president here with us today, folks. So we should be excited to have her here as the president of one of the world's greatest public universities. Cauce is leading the University of Washington in advancing its mission in 4 key areas: providing a leading edge student experience, conducting research and scholarship that has a global impact, holding UW's dedication to its public mission, and infusing the entire university with commitment to innovation. She is UW's 33rd president and has served in this capacity since October 2015. Without further ado, I give you Madam President.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Gary. It's really my pleasure to be here today. And I know that we have some other faculty from the university, from UW Bothell campus, which is just terrific. And so, they may, chime in at some moment when we get to Q&A. My plan is to speak for about 20 minutes or so, and to leave, plenty of time for questions. I really want to be able to talk about those things that you're most interested in. Snohomish County is, always very special to us. I was just telling Gary that I took my first flight post-pandemic about a week ago to visit my great niece and nephew, and I flew out of Payne Field, and what a fabulous airport. I plan to use it every time possible. So thank you, Gary, and thank you all for inviting me to speak. I really do wish we could all be together. I, really, love being able to see your faces and stop by the tables, etc. And I'm really looking forward to getting back together with all of you in person at some point in the not too distant future. As UW president, I've enjoyed my visits to Linwood, Marysville, the Tulalip tribes, have done a number of chamber events then. And quite frankly, I'm in your area quite often. And I hope to visit more communities in your areas to give talks as soon as it's safer to get together, and, beginning to be able to almost taste it. For those of you that are alumni, that are parents or grandparents of some of our students, if you've received care at our hospitals or our clinics, or if you root for the Huskies and can't wait to see our teams on the field or on the court, or if you're simply residents and taxpayers, I want you to know that the University of Washington is your university. Anyone who lives in the state contributes to the University of Washington, and I'm very grateful for your support. And again, regardless of where you got your undergraduate degree, even if you got it at WSU, you are part of our Husky family too. So very much want you to think of this as your university. I like to think of it as the university, not of Washington, but the university for Washington. And we really do see our job as service for the entire state. The University of Washington is committed to the people and the communities of the entire state of Washington, and to ensuring that we have educational and economic opportunity for all the students in our states. Right now, we have a little over 4,400, probably more closer to 4,500 students from Snohomish County that are enrolled at the University of Washington across our 3 campuses. And Snohomish County sends the largest share of UW students to the University of Washington than any other campus after King County. So Snohomish County is a very, very important part of our university, your University of Washington. And I'll give you a few examples of some of your students that have come to our university. They include Dave Summers, Snohomish County executive, who's a proud Husky graduate and former member of the Husky marching band, where he was both a drummer and a drum major. There's Megan Dunn and Jared Mead, both alumni of UW Bothell, who sit on the Snohomish City Council, helping to make critical decisions during this pandemic. And then right now, we have Owen Guys and Benjamin Glover, current UW students and graduates of Glacier Peak High School, who started an organization just in this past year and a half to raise money for PPE for local hospitals during the worst of the pandemic. A wonderful example of student entrepreneurs for the public good. And we want every young person growing up in Snohomish County to be able to imagine a future in which they can become a community leader, a healthcare provider, an innovator, or all of the above, whatever they can dream of and are willing to work hard towards. For students in Washington, a college degree is within reach, but it's really imperative that every student and family get that message. And part of why I am giving lots of talks this year across the state is I want to make sure that we can get that message out. Way too often, our young people and our returning students don't think that college is for them, or they think that they'd like to go, but they can't afford it. And we need community leaders like you to help dispel that misconception. Because for all students, especially for students from families of more modest means, a University of Washington degree can be a path to economic security, to social mobility, and to opportunities to discover and pursue their passions and to reach their full potential. And we really are accessible and affordable. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. For example, on average, a 4-year degree holder earns between $500,000 and $1 million more than a high school graduate over their lifetime. And the University of Washington really excels in that mission of social mobility and of allowing students to make a good economic living. CNBC recently ranked colleges that pay off the most, and they ranked UW's Seattle campus and UW Bothell #1 and #2 respectively of all public universities in the country. And UW Tacoma was rated amongst the West's best bang for the buck by Washington Monthly. And what these rankings are all about is they compare what it costs to go to a college or university and what students make when they graduate. And again, all 3 of our campuses are rated extremely highly in this respect. And not only are students able to graduate from our university with jobs that pay off, but jobs, the kinds of jobs that university graduates have, are more recession-proof. They're less likely to be laid off when there's a recession. And as we've seen in this last year, they're also more pandemic-proof. Students with with college degrees are more apt to be able to work from a mobile setting and to continue to work despite the pandemic. And we also know that in the future, more and more middle class and above jobs will require some kind of post-high school credential, whether a 4-year degree or a credential from a community or technical college. And that's especially the case in states like ours. In fact, the projections are that in just a few short years, that in fact, within the next 5 years, over 60% of jobs in our state will require a 4-year degree. And that's particularly the case because of the kind of innovation economy that we have in our state. And we need more of our students to attain the skills and credential that will allow them to be part of our booming innovation-driven economy. Research and innovation keeps growing all across the state of Washington, in part because of the economic impact of the University of Washington. Just to throw out, a nice big number, the University of Washington's economic impact in the state is estimated at being $15 billion annually. Again, because of the companies that get spun off by our students, by our faculty, because of the employment that we provide around the state, because of the research dollars that we bring in. Sometimes we don't think about it this way, but whenever we bring in, for example, onto our faculty, a researcher in one of our schools of STEM, like in Bothell School of STEM, or University of Washington, the Seattle campus, when we bring in a brand new faculty member, often they come already with research dollars, or they very quickly bring in research dollars that provide jobs to other researchers, to not just researchers, but to administrative assistants, to graduate students, etc. It's like bringing in a small business. And so we are very much part of this booming economy. And what we really want, I think what all of us want, is we want to make sure that our students, that our children, our grandchildren, our nieces, our nephews can really take part in this economic boom and in the economic growth that we're seeing in our area. I want to be clear. It's okay to import talent. I'm an imported individual. I used to start off these talks saying that I'm the 33rd president in my 33rd year at the University of Washington, but now I'm in my 34th year. But I was originally imported, and there's nothing wrong with importing talent. That's part of what makes our state so exciting. But we want to make sure, again, we want to be a state that people want to move to, but we also want to make sure that we're not just importing our top talent, that we're also growing it. We don't want to be the kind of state where it's people from outside that hold the upper level jobs while our kids are washing their cars and cleaning their homes. We want to make sure that our children are prepared to take these high level jobs that are being produced. We want our Washington students to reap the benefits of the economic growth. And one of the ways that we do this is by partnering with businesses across the state, including our 100+ year partnership with Boeing. For example, our Boeing Advanced Research Center, through our Boeing Advanced Research Center, Boeing employee instructors are working side by side with faculty and students on aeronautic and aerospace engineering. It's really a wonderful program. We also offer continuing education program specifically for Boeing employees to help them enhance their skills in a competitive environment. And we hope to be doing more of this kind of retraining. One of the things that we are hearing about more and more is that even if you stay in the exact same job, that your job will change and you will need new skills. And we want to be very much part of this retraining that even students, even employees with graduate degrees will need. But of course, a college education is more than about how many dollars you make. Not that that's anything to sneeze about. As anyone that's experienced economic hardship knows, the ability to make a good living is important. But again, getting a college degree is more than that. As W.E.B. Du Bois, Harvard's first Black graduate and a founder of the NAACP, he was also the mentor of my graduate school mentor, Ed Gordon. So I feel a special kinship there. And he reminded us in a talk that he gave, at a time when it was very difficult for Black students to get graduate degrees, there was very few. He said, as important as it is to make a living, it's even more important to make a life. And a graduate degree will also help to someone to make a life and to enhance what their life is all about. It's a key to a better life, not just in terms of income. For example, college degree holders generally have better health, and that's partly because their jobs don't take as much of a physical toll. It's partly because they make better informed health choices. They also have better health insurance. College degree holders also, in terms of what they cost the state, they need fewer public services. As I said, their jobs are more recession-proof, so they're much less apt to need unemployment benefits. They're much less apt to become homeless, so they cost the state more. They cost the state less, is what I meant, and they provide more taxes that help other people in the state. But they're also, and this is really important, students that earn a college degree are much more apt to be civically engaged. And that includes greater volunteerism and greater philanthropy. And that's something that we really try and inculcate our students while they are students at the university. We really try and inculcate them with the idea that those who have had privileges also have the responsibility to give back. And our students on all three campuses are very, very involved in volunteer work. In fact, we are recognized for the amount of volunteer work that our students do. Our students are always at the top of the list of universities in terms of the number of our students that end up getting involved in the Peace Corps. And we think that this is a very important part of the education. And what's interesting is that college graduates also pass on these traits to the next generation. So it's a virtuous cycle. It's a virtuous cycle. So when you have the first student get their college degree, their students, their children are more apt to get a college degree. Their students are also more apt. Their children are also more apt to be civically engaged. College graduates are also more likely to vote. And that is also very important, as has been made way too clear to us in recent weeks and months. In today's world, educated, active voters are absolutely critical to a thriving economy. First of all, as we know, we are flooded with not just information and having to keep track of it and make sense of it, but we're also being flooded with disinformation. It's all over the place. And more than ever before, we need citizens that are actively involved in critical thinking, that have the skills to be able to examine those facts that are being thrown out at them. Even to be on a jury, for example, and I did jury duty a couple of years ago, and as they were giving us information, it was very clear to me, because I always listen with that educator mentality, that it's important to be able to understand data. For example, forensic evidence, when they say there's a 90% chance, you need to be able to understand that. So, the kinds of critical thinking skills that you get with a college education are also critical for a thriving democracy. We need more and more amongst the general citizenry a basic understanding of science, a basic understanding of how knowledge is attained and how facts are verified, and an appreciation of how policy can and should be shaped by analysis and information. And that's something that we really, really are trying to do. For example, students in UW Bothell's Masters of Arts in Policy Studies are currently working with Snohomish County's Office of Social Justice on projects related to serving local communities equitably. And the Snohomish County Department of Elections is working with UW Bothell political science class in order to figure out how to increase youth voter turnout. Also, students from our Livable City Year program at the Seattle campus are working with the small but fast-growing community of Sultan on a number of projects, including an inventory and assessment of the city's parks and trails. And that's what I mean by, we want our students to be civically engaged, often, in fact, getting course credit for it because the work that they're doing is really important. In fact, I can tell you that there's nothing that when we can have students as part of a political science class or as part of a biology class do projects that are actually going to be used in the real world, they're so much more excited than when they're doing papers and theories. And so we try and make those connections often. So it's critically important, not just to our young people, but to our entire country, to ensure that all of our students see a pathway to college, including students that are the very first in their families to go to the college. In fact, one of the reasons why I look forward to talking to you today is that we have many students in towns like Granite Falls, Sultan, or Stanwood throughout Snohomish County who may not fully realize that the University of Washington and a college degree is within reach for them, that this is something that they can attain without taking on oodles of debt. Funny how those things came together in my mind. For the last decade, the University of Washington has had a program that actually I helped to initiate, and I'm very proud of, called the Husky Promise. And it's enabled eligible students throughout Washington who otherwise couldn't afford college to attend the University of Washington tuition free. Since the Husky Promise program began, more than 40,000 students have gone to the University of Washington without paying one penny in tuition. And it's important for people to know 60% of University of Washington graduates with a bachelor's degree leave with zero, with no known debt. 60% of our students get a college degree with no known debt. And those who do, on average, they get a debt load of less than $22,000 a year. Again, I want to be clear, $22,000 a year is not insignificant. It's nothing to sneeze at, but it's less than the cost of most cars, and it's far outweighed by the lifetime earnings I talked about earlier. Families and students in all parts of Washington need to know that a higher education credential is within reach. And I want to be clear, I'm talking about the University of Washington. That's the university that I represent. That's the university I love most. But this is the case in all our public four-year universities, whether a student wants to go to WSU, Western Washington, Central, Evergreen. Our state has great programs to make sure that students can go and get a public higher education degree and graduate with very little, with very manageable debt. And in fact, Washington is now a national leader. It's been written about in the Wall Street Journal and the top newspapers. It's a national leader in making excellent public higher education affordable. In fact, more affordable than many students and families realize. In 2019, the legislature created the Washington College Grant, and it provides a full tuition scholarship, again, full tuition scholarship to families making up to $55,000 a year. So if you live in a family making less than about $55,000 a year, your child, grandchild, niece, nephew can go to one of the public four-year colleges in our state, tuition free. And it doesn't end there. It offers partial scholarships to families making up to 100% of the median family income, which right now is about $88,000 a year for a family of four. And many of our universities also use their own financial aid. So the tuition packages that our students get are actually quite generous. And this provides a great opportunity for students to attend a fantastic university. And we really do. Again, I'm bragging about University of Washington, but we have a fantastic array of four-year public universities. And they can attend one of these states' fabulous universities or one of their fabulous community and technical colleges with a great deal of financial aid, and for the lowest income families, absolutely tuition free. And I really want to ask you to please help us get this message out. I'm incredibly grateful that our state's policymakers and businesses have recognized the value and importance of creating opportunities for our Washington state students to qualify for the high-paying jobs that so many Washington employers are producing. And as local leaders, you know that our communities thrive when they're full of opportunity, like the collaboration between UW Bothell School of Business and Workforce Snohomish, which creates pathways of opportunities for Snohomish students. And I want to mention, I've mentioned UW Bothell a lot because it is right in your backyard. And right now, more than 1,000 students from Snohomish County are enrolled at UW Bothell. As a public university, we work to ensure that every student has a real pathway to a higher education degree. And again, part of why I'm stressing this is that, you know, it's hard to pick up a newspaper today and not read about the high cost of a college degree. And, you know, you read story after story about students graduating with hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. And, you know, there's no doubt this is true for some students and some colleges in some states. These students exist. I've met them. I've talked with them. But it's not true in our state for our university, for our Washington state students. And it's certainly not true at the University of Washington. But we need you to help get this message out, especially right now as students are making important decisions about going to college. You know, one of the things that's been really sad about this year is that generally we have small armies of UW students who are out there talking to, you know, going into the classrooms and talking to students, working with their parents. And right now that's just not possible. And so we need you to help us get out this message, to get out the message about the affordability of college in Washington to all the young people in Snohomish County, and not just to students that are making their decisions now. But, you know, I do, you know, my own research is with students growing up in at-risk communities. So students that are growing up, students of modest means, African-American, Latinx students. And we know that they begin as early as about 8th or 9th grade, they begin to gauge whether or not they'll be able to go to college and make decisions based on that. So we really need to get this message out to students and to their parents, because their parents are important parts of the decision-making process. We need to let them know that higher education in this state is absolutely affordable at any of our public institutions, whether 2-year or 4-year, and that they can have the degree of their dream. They can have the job of their dream. It is accessible to them. With the pandemic forcing, again, so many of our events online, we can't reach the potential students that we used to by traditional means. There aren't in-person college fairs, visit to local high school campus tours. So I'm really asking your help in getting this message out. I'll talk a moment about the impact of COVID, and then I'll open things up for question. COVID has undoubtedly changed not only how we reach students, but also it's transformed how we do everything at the University of Washington. Right now, this quarter, students are primarily learning remotely, except in a few areas like healthcare, where the work has to happen in person. And we do have appropriate safety protocols in place for those students that are in person. And it's really been inspiring to see our faculty and students rise to the challenge, developing new methods of instruction. And so that our students, and they've been, our students have also been fabulous in terms of their ability to be flexible and adapt. And it's so much fun to see what they've done. For example, we have faculty that are putting those, GoPro on their bicycles so they can take their students out to field trips. We have students in our, for example, music classes that are, doing Zooms with their faculty doing Zooms where, an entire ensemble is working together on Zoom, or in some cases, they've been doing classes in our parking garage so they can be appropriately distanced and outdoors. It has been really fabulous to see all the innovation that's come into our classrooms, and we will continue to do some of these innovative things post-pandemic. We're also really, really pleased that our students have shown the commitment to our degree programs. You've heard about, other colleges that have seen really high dropout rates during the pandemic, and the University of Washington is not one of those. We haven't seen declines in our enrollment, and we haven't seen spikes in the number of students dropping courses. In fact, we've seen, in fact, increases in the number of Washington State students in our 3 campuses. In fact, nearly 3/4 of our new students coming into the university are from Washington State. But we're planning to be largely in person in the fall, and more details will come about how we'll be doing that. But I am so excited at the idea of being able to welcome more students on campus and into the classroom. And in fact, this spring, we've opened up new study areas, and we've given our faculty the okay to have small office hours with students, and we're beginning to do a little bit more in person even this spring. In addition to being able to innovate in the classroom, we've become a world leader in research on how to track, control, and ultimately defeat the coronavirus. Researchers across disciplines are working to understand how the virus spreads, who's most vulnerable, and how we can protect and cure them. I mean, I actually think that one of the real gifts of the pandemic is for those people who think that, research is something that is very, up there in the ivory tower. We've shown how incredibly quickly we can take our knowledge and make it useful. I mean, when you think about it, it was really not much over a year ago when we first recognized that the coronavirus existed. And in that short year, think about all we have learned and all we've been able to do. We've done that, in fact, together with you. Grade school students in Snohomish County schools, in fact, took part in a UW testing project to look at the spread of COVID in schools and classrooms. Again, it's remarkable how much we've learned about COVID. We have multiple tests to detect it, for example. We have tests that can tell you whether you've had it in the past. And we have several treatments for it with more on the way. We also now have multiple vaccines that have proven effective, and they're being distributed. And by next week, they'll be available to almost anyone over the age of 16 in Washington. And we will be, the University of Washington Medical Center is very much involved in being out there to help make sure that people are being vaccinated, especially in the most vulnerable communities. This pandemic has revolutionized the development of vaccines in general, and really gives me a lot of hope that when there are new pandemics in the future, and there will be most likely, that we can get on top of them right away, even more quickly than this time around. As the vaccine rollout ramps up, the University of Washington will be a leader in making sure that we get vaccines in arms, because that is so important. We're also doing a lot of work on how we can enhance vaccine acceptance, because it is critical, not just that the vaccine is available, but that people actually take the vaccines. It's not well known, but in the 1980s and 90s, the UW School of Pharmacy and Public Health had the idea to make vaccines more accessible in local pharmacies. Part of the reason why you can get your flu shot at your local pharmacy is because of work that was done by UW pharmacies and public health. And all across the state, UW-educated pharmacists and pharmacy students and faculty are very involved in making sure that the vaccine is delivered. And they have been very involved in making sure that you can get it at your local Safeway, at your local pharmacy. Again, trying to make it as easy as possible for people to get vaccinated. And that is absolutely critical because, and like I say, right now we are seeing higher supply, and we really think, and it is critical that we go fast because we're in a fight against the variant. I'm often asked how I define the University of Washington's mission. And I see it as both simple and ambitious. It's not a, 15-page, statement. It's very simple. I want us to be the greatest public research university in the world as measured by our impact. Right now, that impact is a matter of life and death as we work hard to end this pandemic that has cost us so many lives and destabilized so many others. Our impact is in the lives of students who can continue to pursue their degree, taught by excellent, talented faculty, committed to helping them get their education during this hard time. It's in our impact in helping to strengthen communities across Washington to ensure that they can thrive and be resilient, even when they are faced with challenges like COVID. It's in our impact on equity to make sure that as we have a recovery, that it's a real equicovery. We don't want to go back to normal. We want a better than normal, a more equitable normal. I know that we have UW supporters with us today, so I thank you all for all that you're helping us accomplish. We're proud to be your conduit to making a difference in things that you care about, and I know that you care about the impact that we make. As leaders across Snohomish County, as Washingtonians, I know you're guided by your sense of mission and commitment to making a positive difference in the world. And I want you to know that our faculty, staff, and students share your commitment to making a positive difference. And we want to not only make our communities survive, but to thrive, and to do so in a way that has impact across Washington and the world. I look forward to your questions, whatever they may be, and I look forward to continued partnership with all of you in Snohomish County. Thank you very much for inviting me today. Happy to take questions about anything and everything.
All right. Excuse me, that was excellent. Madam President, I think this is an awesome opportunity to engage some folks. There are some questions in the chat, but please feel free to add those. We'll start off with a few questions that we had listed above. One, you touched on briefly, but how has the pandemic affected student application numbers?
Well, like I say, actually, we have not seen, most places have seen negative effects. Our numbers are up. We're up about 13% in terms of applications. Now, we are hearing that people are applying to more colleges than ever before, so we'll see what that means. But we have every reason to believe that we will be able to fill every slot. In fact, one of the things, and I want to make it clear, that I am not one of those college presidents that brags about how many students we turn down. I am sad that we have to turn down some very qualified students. And that's why I'm really, really happy that we have a really strong ecosystem of higher education. There are, other great universities that students have access to.
Okay, that's an excellent response. I think people are encouraged by that. And so this second question is from Ron, and it looks like there's a couple additions to it. So I'll shorten it up here, but I think in essence, the question is with the difficulty to be accepted to UW because of its prestigious nature and interest from all different walks of life. Once someone is accepted, Ron says that there may be additional barriers because of the level of interest in particular schools within UW. So his question is, how do you remedy that and to give people more of an opportunity? So any thoughts there?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for that question, because it does give me a chance to say and to be very clear about the fact that I think it's about 60% or so of Washington students that apply to the University of Washington Seattle campus do get in. So we take more students than we decline. And like I say, we take no pleasure in saying no. I also want to really reinforce that we have two other terrific campuses, UW Bothell and UW Tacoma, and they accept an even larger percentage of Washington State students. And so, please, consider their separate applications, but consider applying to those campuses as well. I know that for some of us who have been in Washington State for a long time, we remember Bothell and Tacoma when they were tiny little campuses. That's not the case anymore. Each of them enroll more than 5,000 students. They are the size of a regional campus, and they have strong schools of business. They have strong schools of computer science and STEM. They have, great degree programs. We are expanding. We have been expanding our STEM programs year after year. Our computer science program has almost doubled in the last 10 years. So we continue to expand those programs that are in high demand. But, the truth is we're not going to be able to on the Seattle campus. And you wouldn't want us to be able to, because then we'd be depriving other great schools of other great students, but do. And I know that UW Bothell's STEM dean is on this and is in the chat room. Please feel free to engage with them, because there are great programs across our three campuses. And when we think about our access mission, we think about it as a 3-campus mission.
Okay. So another question that we had I thought you touched on briefly, but what are the plans for commencement this year?
Yeah, our plans for commencement are virtual this year. I mean, one of the things that, even though we are doing some more things in person, and we are working, all three campuses are working to see if they can't do, some special things, on our Seattle campus. We're putting up more W's for students to be able to take their picture in front of it, et cetera. But, commencement is not something that can be done very easily in a distance way. And students want their whole families there. I mean, we did a lot of looking, and if we wouldn't be able to have students and their whole families there in a distanced way. And we weren't confident that people would be not only vaccinated, but 2 weeks post. So we are doing it virtually. But one thing that we're really excited about is last year, when we did it virtually, students were often at home with maybe just their parents, and their grandparents were someplace else, et cetera. And we're very hopeful that this year, they can watch it and participate at home with their grandparents with them, and being able to celebrate. And we will have options in the future for students who really want to be in person to be able to do it. But we also need to remember that we're going to be coming up with new rituals. As much as we may have enjoyed, I mean, I enjoyed, even though it hurt at the end, shaking 5,000 hands. We probably won't be doing that again. And that, we need to be thinking about the fact that we're going to be celebrating in new and different ways.
Okay. Well, it looks like you got a little message of appreciation from Dr. Paul Petrie at WSU, Land of the Cougs, thanking you for your efforts featuring the legislative leaders and the work that they've done for post-secondary education, making that attainable for the student population. Additionally, I saw a question from Anil Verma, and I'll just let all of you know who are on screen. If you want to just put your comment in the chat, we'll take your questions that way. I saw a couple of hands go up.
I want to mention, I have a couple of folks from UW that, any questions that I don't answer, if you get them to me, we will make sure that they're answered, and you can distribute it. I want to make sure that everyone has their answered question. And I'll take this opportunity to say, we partner with the Cougars all the time. We partner with we even partner with the Gooey Ducks. We partner with Western Washington. We partner with, there's 1 day a year, sometimes 2 days a year, because there's basketball too, where we go like that with our Cougars. We're proud of our Apple Cup victories. But we work together all the time. We do research together. We have many students that they get their undergraduate degree at WSU and then get their graduate U at UW, or vice versa. This is really about partnerships. We want to make the state a better place.
Right. Next question is from Anil Verma at Bear Creek. Can we talk about how small business can engage with large institutions like the university to offer their solutions to the university?
Absolutely. And I know that we have our Director of External Relations, our Vice President of External Relations, Randy Hodgins, online. And if you can send him your email, we will get in touch. But we have a number of programs. One of them is called Commotion. And that is a program where we partner with business in terms of innovation. There are all kinds of different ways. And so if you want to if there's any small business here that wants to partner with us, please put your email in the chat and we'll get back to you.
Okay, next question that I have on screen is, I don't think I have a name here, but will there be a discussion on UW for work in Alliance for Child Welfare Excellence? So trying to find out if there's some engagement there for Alliance for Child Welfare Excellence.
Well, I can't address whether we have a partnership with that specific, but I can tell you that we have a School of Social Work that is in all three campuses. It is one of the top rated schools of social work in the state, and they have partnerships all over the state, with Olympia in terms of serving students. So if we don't have a partnership, we should have one.
Yeah. Thank you. And then Zach asked about the vaccines being required for students that attend large in-person classes in the fall.
Yeah, we're having discussions about that. And, I want to be clear, our goal, there is no question that our goal is to have as many students vaccinated as absolutely possible so that we can reach herd immunity. I think that, that there's always this question of what's better, carrots or sticks, so to speak. I want people to realize that when you talk about requiring vaccinations, all that a student has to do is write a note saying that it's against their religious beliefs or that they have, that they think it's going to have, that they're concerned about health benefits. So we find that, even with vaccines that are required, that there are, as many as 10–15% of students who end up opting out of those vaccines. And that is perfectly possible. Also, what you can do if a student doesn't take the required vaccine, what you can do is put a registration hold so that they can't get their degree, et cetera, but it's not like you have a guard stopping them from coming into their classes. So we've been talking to other universities about the potential of, rather than doing the stick, so to speak, is doing more with carrots. So that, for example, if a student shows their vaccination card, they get a free lunch at the hub, or they get 10% off their books at the university bookstore. What we are finding, and we're very proud, Washington State is one of the lowest states, and in terms of folks that are saying that they are unapt to be vaccinated. We did a calculation. About 30% of people already have received one vaccine. And of those people who haven't been vaccinated, close to 70%, and this is the general public, not educated students, which have a higher, are saying. And so we think that even if we had no carrots or no sticks, we would probably have about 80% of students being vaccinated. We are, and I haven't announced this, so please don't go out and talk about this yet. But University of our medical school is planning to put up some pop-up vaccine clinics on our campus for our students. So I think right now where we're focused is we want to make it easy for students to get vaccinated so that it's not hard for them to get a vaccine. And we want to incentivize them to be vaccinated. And right now I'm thinking that that will get as many or more students vaccinated as a requirement. But there's no question a requirement isn't off the table. All of the presidents of all the public 4 years are talking about that, but our goal is to get as many students vaccinated as possible so that we have herd immunity. I will also say that the classes that are most likely to continue online are the really big lecture classes. And some of those, for example, we already teach at the Seattle campus introductory biology and introductory chemistry, which are 700 student classes. What we do in those classes is we already do flip the class. What I mean is the lectures are online. Students watch them in the library, they watch them at home, and then they go in for laboratories, for discussion groups, etc. And we may do that with more of our really big classes, is continue to have them online, but then have smaller sections for discussion, for labs, etc.
Okay, well, we're coming down to our last final moments, and I want to make sure you have time to give your final remarks. So I'm going to ask one final question, and this is concerning what is occurring in the legislature this year that benefits or hinders higher education, and then you're welcome to give your final remark after that.
Well, we really have had good partnerships with the legislature in 2019, which brought the college grant program that is really making higher education more accessible. I think this year, we've been very lucky in the state. We were very worried about tax collections, and partly because of the innovation economy we have, Many of our companies have been doing quite well, and the legislature hasn't had to make the deep cuts. And, we are very pleased, so far with a lot of what they're doing. I mean, I'll be honest, our faculty staff are concerned that we will probably go through another year without raises, and over time that does add up. But I think that, we feel very good about, again, nothing is final until it's final, but we feel good about where things are going for all our four-year institutions. I think the state recognizes that we're important partners. And that, what I want to close with is that, I really want everyone to see our institutions of higher education, again, not just UW, WSU, Western Washington, Central Evergreen, that, we're not just, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but there are agencies that in some ways are hungry mouths to feed, and it's important to feed hungry mouths. So I'm not saying that as a put down to those agencies, but I think, we want you to view higher education as not just another hungry mouth to feed, but as an investment in our future, as partners in solving problems. I think we have really proved our worth during this pandemic. We would not be where we are in terms of being as on top of things. Our state has been a leader in terms of the relatively, again, every death is, and every illness is absolutely heartbreaking, but compared to other states, we've had much lower rates. And that's partly because of the investments that you've made into four-year universities. And again, we want you to see us as an investment in the future, as an investment in your children, your grandchildren, your nieces, your nephews, your neighbors, and as partners in making this a better state, a better nation, and a better world. Because the one thing that we have learned in this pandemic is we're all interconnected. Anyone being ill can become everybody being ill. And so we have to work together. We treasure our partnership with you, and together we can go forward.
All right. Well, thank you very much, President Anna Marie Cauce. We really appreciate your time, dedication to Washington State and beyond, and the work that you've done. I want to thank you for UW Huskies being just an inspirational university for everyone here and abroad. And we know that the impact that you make in creating opportunities for students, young and adults, to find their goals and dreams and envision those things in our communities will continue to make ripples. So everyone raise your coffee cups or glasses for Madam President, and go Huskies.
Go Huskies. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So as we rotate, we have more coming. So next week, we go back to having our coffee chat updates. And so with that in mind, we're going to talk a little bit about relationship building. That's right. We're going to go back to rebuilding relationships with China on April 13th at 8:30 a.m. sharp. Those of you in the chat, we will make sure that some of your questions will get answered that we didn't get to today. And we really appreciate you all joining us today for another Economic Alliance Snohomish County coffee chat. Thank you all. Again, thank you, President Anna Marie Cauce, and we will see you all later. Take care.